My name is Vera Thomas. I am a best-selling author, a speaker, a trainer, a coach, a poet, and I am here today to talk to you about instilling greatness in yourself and your children. I have been in my career for over 40 years. I've worked with companies, organizations, schools, and churches, youth and adults, and senior citizens. And today, my passion and my desire is to help parents instill greatness in themselves as well as their children. When you consider the second cause of death for 10-year-olds to 26-year-olds is suicide, parents have got to be more engaged in their children's lives. But so often, parents are bringing so much baggage into parenting that sometimes it's hard to instill greatness in a child when a parent may not be feeling that greatness themselves. So let me ask you a question. What do you wish you had been told as a child? I ask my clients this and I get responses like, I wish I had been told I love you. I wish I had been told you're special. I wish I had been told you're doing a great job. I wish I had been told I'm proud of you. My premise is if parents haven't received those kinds of accolades and edification, then they may not understand the importance of sharing that with their own child. And the reason for that is the importance of that is that children are people too. Show them the good inside of you. Give them praise for tasks they do. See their light as it shines through the light which comes from inside of you. Children need all we desire so much: the love, the hug, the kiss, the tender touch. The attitudes we express to them are the messages they learn to send. From examples like you and me, our children grow to be what they see. Do you show hatred, indifference, or love? Do you yell and scream no matter what in spite of? Have you shared kind words with your child today? Have you truly listened to what they had to say? Or did you just ignore and continue on your way, hoping they get the message and go somewhere and play? Children are an extension of all that we are and the most valued God given gift by far. There are so many things they must grow to understand. We must guide and lead them with loving, outstretched hands. Teach and treat children as people too. See their light shine bright through the light which comes from inside of you. And I just want to talk a few minutes about some things that can help to instill greatness, not only in yourself, but in your children as well. One of the things that is so important is the ability to accept responsibility for your actions and behaviors. Now, I can speak on that because right after being separated from an abusive marriage, my son was only a year old at the time. I left my husband when my son was 6 months old because of the abuse. He attacked me in front of my son, and I was not about to raise my son in that kind of environment. And I remember when my son was about 1 year old, one of the members of my church, she came and spent some time with us. And I remember being bitter and saying to her, if it wasn't for this, if it wasn't for that, if it wasn't for him, my life wouldn't be this way. And she looked at me and she said, no, Vera, if it wasn't for you and the choices that you have made, your life wouldn't be this way. Well, needless to say, I became rather defensive. How dare you say this is my fault? Well, I had to think about it and reflect. If I had not made some choices that I made, then my life would not have been that way. So understanding the ability to accept responsibility for your actions, your behaviors, and the consequences of that. I'm telling you, there are a lot of parents that don't get it. And so if they don't get it, how are they going to teach their child to accept responsibility? I remember teaching my son and saying to him, you have to accept responsibility for your actions, your behaviors, and the consequences of those things. I drilled that into him. But just think, had I not started accepting responsibility for my actions and my behavior, then I would not have known to teach him those things as well. I remember one day I was driving, I had someone else in my car, and my son called me. And the first thing he said to me was, Mom, pray for me. The second thing he said was, I really messed up and I got to fix it. Now, in the meantime, I've got someone in my car who was just telling me that she didn't feel that the things that were happening in her life had anything to do with her actions and her behaviors. When in actuality, she felt this sense of entitlement, like someone owed her something, like somebody should be doing something for her as a result of her behavior, her consequences. And so I said to her, she heard my son, and I said to her, you can't blame anyone for what's happening with you right now because of the choices that you've made that have resulted in this situation. So one of the things that as parents we need to do is learn to accept responsibility for our actions and our behaviors. There are so many adults out here that want to blame everything on everybody without looking at what is it that I did that caused these things to happen to me. So I'm talking about instilling greatness in yourself and your children. I also want to talk about, in that poem I mentioned, do you yell and scream? Well, let me say something about yelling. There are 4 basic types of yelling. The first, of course, is yelling when we see that a child is in danger. I remember visiting Ohio when my grandson was 2 years old. And we had gone on a ride, and as soon as he got out of my car, he took off, just running. Now I couldn't catch him. And all I could do was scream, Miles, 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 come back, Miles. And I was yelling. And he kept running, he kept running. So I couldn't do anything but yell, just yelling to try to keep him out of danger. It so happened he was getting ready to cross the street. Thank God there were no cars around. But a neighbor across the street ran into the street and grabbed him and brought him back. So when we see that a child is in danger, of course, we are going to yell. A second type of yelling is when we're raising our voice and we don't think we're yelling, but other people see it as yelling. We're just trying to get a point across. Well, maybe we need to de-escalate our voice and sound more calm so that people aren't thinking that we're yelling. Now, there was yelling back in the time of slavery when slaves would yell back and forth to each other and use this call and response. And they used it as a tool for communicating without the slave masters understanding exactly what they were doing. Now, that was necessary yelling. But then there's that yelling when we are angry and we're frustrated and we're just all out of sorts. And we start yelling at our kids because they're not doing what it is that we want them to do. That kind of yelling can cause much damage. I had a teacher tell me that she could tell the difference between a child that is raised in a family where there's constant yelling and a child where yelling is not so much. Studies have shown that the brain waves change in children that are constantly yelled at. Yelling can cause all kinds of problems, physical problems, stomach aches, backaches, headaches. Yelling can cause emotional problems, depression, anxiety, shyness, because a person begins to become an introvert because they're yelled at all the time, and then that fear of speaking up or saying anything because they're going to get yelled at, and it just causes a lot of problems, a lot of problems. Think about it. How do you feel when you are yelled at? What kinds of physical or emotional problems do you incur as a result of someone yelling at you? On the other hand, I want you to also think about what kinds of response do you get from yelling? From yelling, you may end up with a headache because you've yelled so loud. You may end up with your stomach hurting because you've yelled so hard. Yelling is not good. Now, don't get it twisted. I am not saying that I never yelled at my son. But when we know better, we do better. And so when I recognized that I wasn't getting anywhere yelling at him, because yelling also teaches a child that that's the way to handle conflict. It also teaches a child that yelling is okay. And it also can generate additional bad behavior from yelling. So how did I stop yelling? Well, when we yell, we recognize when we're getting all worked up and all riled up. We recognize it. We can feel it. We can feel it coming on. So what I started doing was calming myself. And I would say, peace, be still. Peace, be still. And as I said, peace, be still, then I was calming myself. And as a result of me calming myself, I was able to speak in a normal tone to my son. Rather than yelling at him, I would calm myself and express how I felt about whatever the behavior was or whatever it was that I was about to yell about. And I found by doing that, he responded better to me. And so we didn't have the yelling matches that often go on in families. I'm talking about instilling greatness in yourself and your children. One of the issues that yelling also can create, studies show that juvenile arthritis can be contributed to yelling. So as you can see, there are a lot of things that can occur as a result of a child being in an environment where there's constant yelling. So calm yourself. Peace, be still. And if you're not able to discuss the issue because you are so angry, because you are so frustrated, then you might want to say to that child, listen, right now I'm really, really upset. So what I want you to do is go to your room. I want you to think about your behavior. I'm going to think about your behavior, and we're going to come back and talk about it more calmly, because right now I'm really having a problem being able to talk to you. And it's okay to say that to your child. And it's okay to remove yourself so that you're not yelling at the child. One of the other things that can impact on a child's life is when we make a child feel guilty trying to get them to do what we want them to do. That can impact on their self-esteem. That can impact on their self-worth. One of the other things, people oftentimes will attack when they're upset. Instead of attacking the behavior, a lot of times people start with the name calling and, saying things that are attacking the person. Learn to address the behavior and not attack the person, whether it's your child or your significant other or even a friend. We don't need to do the name calling to make a point. The point is the behavior. And when we address the behavior with facts and evidence. Let me say that again. Address the behavior with facts and evidence. And that way you're addressing what's going on without attacking the person. My son will tell you I never called him out of his name. I never called him stupid. I never called him dumb. I never called him anything other than his name. One of the reasons is because I grew up being called stupid, dumb, fat, ugly. Even you're nothing, you'll never be anything. Those are not things you want to tell your child. And I don't want any child to ever feel like I felt when I was told those things. That is one of the reasons that I do what I do. I remember being in a school working with some kids, and their parents were there as well for this program that I had developed. And I'm telling you, there was a 10-year-old little boy. As the parents, the mothers were there doing a special project, and this little boy, he said, I can't stand and look at myself in the mirror. That brought tears to my eyes for a 10-year-old to tell me I can't stand to look at myself in the mirror. And the mothers that were there, his mother was nowhere around. And the mothers that were there, they just rallied around him. But the other beautiful thing was that these children, these were third, fourth, and fifth graders, these children rallied around him and showed him so much love. We don't ever want a child to feel like that. We don't ever want a child to feel like they are less than anybody else. And that is why I'm here today, to give you some tools to kind of help you look at how am I addressing my child. Now we're talking about homeschooling and all those things, so which means that you are around your child pretty much for the day. And I'm sure there are times when you do get frustrated. Well, in getting frustrated does not mean that you have to attack the child. You can address the behavior. You can also give your child chores and things to do. I raised my son as a single mother. After my ex-husband and I left each other, I raised him from the time he was 6 months up until even now. Well, he's grown now. He's on his own. I have grandchildren now. But because I was working full time and I was also going to school, it was important for me to help give him responsibilities. At the age of 4, he was vacuuming. Now I would walk around and pick up the big stuff, but I would give him that responsibility. He was vacuuming. At the age of 9, he was in the kitchen with me. I remember talking with a parent and a child, and this little boy, 9 years old himself, and I asked him, what do you want to be when you grow up? And he said, I want to be a chef. So my next question was, well, are you cooking with your mom? And the mom was there, the dad was there as well. And he said, no. And so I suggested to the mother, if he wants to be a chef, then let him be in the kitchen with you. Let him cook with you. And even if he makes a mess, it's okay. You're allowing him to at least experiment with what he says he wants to do in his life. So that's the other thing I want to encourage parents. If you see a gift in your child, if you see something special about that child, enhance it, nurture it, do something with it, because that may be the very thing that takes them to the level of greatness. Let me say that again. That may be the very thing that takes them to the level of greatness. My son loves to cook. And as a result of me letting him cook with me when he was 9, by the time he was 13 and 14, I was coming home from work and dinner was done. Yes, dinner was done because he had perfected cooking. He loves to cook. When he was in middle school, he told me he did not like the way I did his laundry because I wasn't turning his pants inside out. And so at that point, I said, well, go ahead and do your own laundry. So in middle school, my son started doing his own laundry, and I would praise him for it. And it freed me up. I was able to do my laundry. He could do his laundry. And so I'm sharing these things with you because these are ways that you can help instill greatness in your children and free you up to kind of do some other things that you need to do as well. When my son was in middle school, he sang, I Believe I Could Fly. Now, from the time he was a toddler all the way up through middle school, I had an affirmation on my bathroom mirror. That affirmation said, I am talented, I am intelligent, I am creative. I had my son speak those words every day from the time he was able to talk. Every day, I would have him speak those words. So when he did this performance in middle school, I'm telling you, teachers and parents came up to me. And you know what they said? They said, Miss Thomas, your son Miles, he's so intelligent, he's so creative, he's so talented. And all I could do, and Miles and I looked at each other because he had been speaking that. And I'm saying to you, one way to instill greatness in your children is to affirm them. Have them affirm. Start from a toddler. We can't wait until a child is in middle school or high school to try to transform them. It starts at 3, 4-year-olds. In fact, studies show kids absorb so much more at that age. So start affirming them and start having them affirm themselves. I'm telling you, others will see whatever it is they're affirming and will confirm that affirmation. One of the other things that I want to encourage parents not to do, never compare the siblings against each other. Never suggest to one, why can't you be more like your sister? Why can't you be more like your brother? When we do that, we devalue that child. So you want to really be careful what we say to our children, because oftentimes those feelings, they linger on. Think about it. Think about as a child yourself, what were some things that you just weren't able to shake because it had such an impact on you. So think about that when you're looking at raising your child. One of the other things that's just so important, never be sarcastic when talking with a child. A child doesn't know you're being sarcastic. They take things at face value. So speak truth and let them know truth, not sarcasm. That can help devalue a child. And so I'm trying to share with you the kinds of things that can just really elevate a child or deflate a child. Life and death is in the power of the tongue. What we say is what we get. So I want you to speak life into yourself and speak life into your child. Speak life into your spouse. Speak life into your friends. Speak life. Speak life. Yes, you see these words here on my wall. Yes, because I look at them on a consistent base to help me affirm who I want to be and who I am. And so I've shared with you some tools and some things that you can do that will instill greatness in yourself and instill greatness in your child. One, accept responsibility for your actions and your behaviors, and then teach your children to do the same. Two, don't yell. Instead of yelling, calm yourself. Calm yourself. Yelling does so much damage, not only to your child, but think of the physiological aspects of it on yourself. I remember a situation where I had gone into a home, and this person, when as soon as I walked in the door, they were yelling at me. I mean, yelling to the top of their lungs. And this was a person that was not well, was sick, physically sick. And I had brought some things there for them. So I just left the stuff on the counter and said, I will talk to you later. And I left because I'm not getting into a shouting match when it's not necessary. And remember, it takes two to argue. So if someone's yelling at you, just keep it moving. Tell them I'll see you later, or let's talk about this later, instead of having a shouting match. And so I left. And a couple of days later, we had a conversation, and I asked, how did that make you feel, yelling like that? And they told me they got sick. They were already sick. But the yelling just fueled that sickness. They had to go lay down because they were sick. And that's what yelling did to them. And so just be careful with your tone. And remember, it's not what we say, but how we say it. And I just want to encourage you to be encouraged, because your children, they're not trying to push your buttons. They're not trying to make you angry. They're just kids. And the other thing, throwing back in a child's face what they did yesterday, what they did a week ago, what they did a month ago, what they did a year ago, that doesn't solve the problem. You can't move forward looking back. So each day is a new day. It's a clean slate. So rather than remind a child of the bad behavior that they had in the past, see it as a new day, a new beginning, a clean slate. And again, you can't move forward looking back. And how many adults do you know that are constantly talking about what happened yesterday, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago? You can't move forward looking back. And if you as a parent is constantly reflecting back on the bad things that happened in the past, and your kids are hearing that, you're teaching them that. You're teaching them that. So think about this. Again, you can't move forward looking back. And so I want to just encourage you, think about it. Sometimes we have to look at ourselves. A lot of times we have fingers pointing at people. You. No, sometimes it's me. What do I need to do to improve myself and to improve me being a parent and to instill greatness in my child? What can I do? What do I need to do? I have an exercise that deals with misconceived behaviors. And those behaviors include the blame game, which I used to do as a young person. And I learned, no, you can't blame other people for your circumstances. You can't blame other people for your situations. We have to look at ourselves. And also, You may say, well, there are some things that are out of our control. That's very true. There are some things that are out of our control. And those things, all we can do, the serenity prayer is something that I reflect on. Change the things I can change, acknowledge the things that I cannot change, and know the difference. So if I can't change it, why am I reflecting on it? If I can't change it, why am I wasting time worried about it? Which is another thing. When kids see us worried all the time, worried about this and worried about that, when kids see that, guess what? They become worry warts too. Children grow to be what they see. So I had a sign on my refrigerator once that said, why worry when you can pray? Why pray if you're going to worry? So if you are a believer and you truly do trust God, then pray about the situation and leave it alone. Let it go. Let it go. Well, listen, I do hope that I have given you some nuggets that are going to help you instill greatness in yourself as well as instill greatness in your child. My name is Vera Thomas. You can find me on Instagram at vera.thomas.779. Vera.thomas.779. I also have a podcast on Tuesdays at 7 p.m. that's on Facebook, The Vera Thomas Show. And it's also on YouTube, The Vera Thomas Show. And it's on a couple other platforms, including Twitch, and an additional channel on Facebook, and an additional channel on YouTube, DJ Grady Baby Radio. So I hope that you connect with me. And if you're interested in knowing what programs I have coming up, then please follow me on Instagram. And I will be posting an event that's going to be coming up soon that's specifically to help instill greatness in yourself and your child. Thank you very much. God bless. Bye-bye.